Hello everybody and welcome back to Mighty Modern. I'm Corbin Hosler and this week I am pleased to announce that Birthing Pod is back, folks. Pyre of Heroes has come to Modern. We've had it for a couple weeks. I was able to do some videos with Elf Pod a few weeks ago, and you know what? I enjoyed it so much. I wanted to continue on that track. So this week it is Combo Pyre Goblins, whatever you want to call it. It's Goblin Pod, okay? It's incredible that we can do this. Look, I have to say, before I get into the cards in this deck, we've come a long way since Goblins was a bunch of reckless bushwhackers and one-drops, have we not? This looks like a Goblin deck in Legacy. Goblin Matron, Goblin Ringleader, Mogg War Marshal, Goblin Chieftain, Goblin Warchief. I love it. So let's talk about the deck. Of course, what made all of this possible was in order, Modern Horizons, which gave us cards like Sling-Gang Lieutenant, which are very powerful, gave us Munitions Expert, which is absolutely vital to the deck. But then the big one was Conspicuous Snoop out of M21. This, of course, creates the combo that this deck wins on a lot of the time, but not all of the time. So what does that mean? It means that Boggart Harbinger can put a Goblin card on top of our library, and that is pretty good with Conspicuous Snoop. So, if you play Conspicuous Snoop on turn 2, you can cast cards from the top of your library if they're goblins, but also activate any goblin abilities. For instance, if a Kiki-Jiki is on top of your library, well, now you can activate the Conspicuous Snoop ability to make a copy of a creature. Pretty good, right? We can use that to make copies of itself. This will give us infinite tapped Conspicuous Snoops because that token is non-legendary, so it's not going to go away. We're going to have infinite tapped Conspicuous Snoops. The final one will then target the Boggart Harbinger again. The Boggart Harbinger will go put the Sling-Gang Lieutenant on top of our deck, and we can then sacrifice all of those tapped goblins with the Conspicuous Snoop abilities to drain our opponent. That's sort of the combo the deck relies on. But before, where you just kind of shoved it into a mid-range Goblins deck that, of course, you know, relies on Aether Vial. That's what our deck is great with here. Now we have another wrinkle, which really makes a big difference, I think. It's Pyre of Heroes. So what the Pyre does, it's Birthing Pod, folks. Tribal Pod. Tribal Birthing Pod. And you know what? That's good enough in a deck that is all goblins. And now we can put those combos together in different ways. We can go get haste enablers if we want. You can get ringleaders to reload. You can get munitions experts if you have the one prospector out anyway. So this is actually a really, really neat way to build this deck, and I am excited to give this one a go, everybody. Goblin Pod in Modern. So moving on to the sideboard here. Chalice of the Void, where you need those one-drops. Thoughtleize for the combo decks. Cratermaker for your colorless needs. You know, hello Tron. Spellbomb for the graveyard hate, and Heartless Act where it makes sense. I'm sure those situations will come up. So it is somewhat straightforward. We have found a way to slam Birthing Pod into a modern Goblins deck. Not something you would expect just a couple of years ago when the whole plan was to play 16 one-drops and a bunch of reckless bushwhackers, right? And goblin bushwhackers. Goblins has come a long way, and I think it's come a long way for the better, and I'm excited to show this one off here on Mighty Modern. Everyone, thanks so much for watching. Let's jump right on into the matches. All right, here we go. Goblin Pod, and I have to say, a hand that gives us a combo hand is a pretty good off the bat here, is it not? We get a lead with the Blackcleave Cliffs into the Aether Vial. And we can go turn, I guess it's not quite the way we'd, you know, we don't have the, unless we draw a mountain, the double red here. Looks like our opponent's on vampires. We're not the only ones playing tribes, I guess. Okay, so let's put a counter on that. And you know what? Hey, sometimes you just got it, right? There's the double red for the Snoop. Let's just run this thing out. We're going to draw a land next turn that we can play to set up the Boggart Harbinger and go to town, right? Pretty darn solid. Now, hopefully our opponent doesn't follow up with removal, and we'll be good to go here. Well, they certainly are holding it up at least, but hey, I'm not going to not try, right? So we'll use the Aether Vial ability here, and let's go ahead, run out the Harbinger, see what happens. Okay, well, we get to resolve it. We get to put the Kiki-Jiki on top. Quick look through the deck here. And now let's try to begin. We'll go ahead and make a copy of the Snoop. Make a copy of the Snoop, and yep, here we go. We're off to the races. It doesn't appear that our opponent will be stopping us. Now, they may not be familiar with the combo. I like that this combo is just a nice two-clicker here on Magic Online. Magic Online, of course, you know, somewhat... What has happened? What? Okay. Magic Online somewhat famous for having difficult to complete combos. That is the thing, right? If you think about back to old Modern, sort of the old Abzan pod decks that could gain infinite life. Well, you can't exactly gain infinite life on Magic Online, can you? You will run, you'll clock out. So this is something that is, you know, they actually took steps at that time to try to just reduce the number of clicks it took, because, you know, sometimes you and your opponent would agree to, oh yeah, I gained infinite life, if people were really concerned about the competitive integrity. But other people, and this is, you know, not unreasonable, I think, would say, well, you know, part of playing Magic Online is playing the clock, and that's a real thing. Look, no one's going to complain when they lose a match or, you know, win a match because your opponent timed out, right? That's not reasonable to expect. So, you know, I have to say that. Let's see if maybe my opponent's going to respond to the last one and get the... I think we've got enough now. And get the Harbinger? We'll see. Nope, looks like we're good to go. Okay. Well, this is how you do it, folks. This is how you combo right on out with goblins in Modern. So, I will choose them. Sack a goblin. All right, and the combo is off and running here. Just have to click this 19 more times, I guess. Turn 3 win. Which is, you look, that's not uncommon, I guess, in Modern these days, but it's still pretty nice, right? And it looks like our opponent may be of the mindset that they're going to make us play it out. So we're going to do that. We're just going to click this 15 more times. And go to work. So let's think about what we're looking at in Sideboard here, right? This is a perfect demonstration of how this deck works. So now let's think about what our opponent's going to do. They're surely going to have a bunch of removal in their Tribal Vampire deck over there, which is, I have to say, and I don't know that if it has the tools to compete in today's Modern, but Tribal Vampires is one of those, you know, as a Merfolk player, right? I love tribal decks. It's one of those tribes I always wanted to make work. There's a lot of powerful cards. You may not know this, but there's like an instant back from the original Innistrad or something that would give all your vampires plus 1-0 in first strike or plus 2-0 in first strike. Something really powerful. I always wanted to play it. In addition to stuff, I mean, hey, this doesn't look like much, but I'll tell you, this card is surprisingly playable. One, it's worth more than you'd expect for an uncommon, but it trades with the Tarmogoyf. It gains you life. It really does a lot of work. And if you're following it up with Gifted Aetherborns, all of a sudden you're playing Death Touch Vampire Tribal, and you can get a lot of work done that way. So, all right, our opponent has seen enough. On to game 2. Well, what do I want here? I don't know. I mean, we didn't really see much. I guess the Heartless Acts aren't going to be bad. Really not sure what our opponent is going to be up to. But I don't think I have to go that fast. I'll cut the Skirk Prospector here. We'll play a couple Heartless Acts and see what happens. Also keep in mind, Knight of the Ebon Legion is pretty good, and so is Sorin Imperious Bloodlord. I'm kind of talking myself into giving Tribal Vampires a shot here in the future, I'll be honest. Plus, they have a Lord that gives +1/+1 in first strike. Modern is not necessarily as creature-oriented as, you know, maybe it used to be, so the first striking is maybe not quite as relevant, but hey, it's still pretty good in a lot of matchups, including in this one, if we don't just combo our opponent out. And speaking of, I think this hand's pretty weak. It's a lot of lands. You know, you want, if you have an Aether Vial, you don't want many lands. It doesn't have a good curve. The Munitions Expert isn't doing much. I'm going to ship it. And I'm going to end up with something much better. So here I can throw away, I guess the Bloodstained Mire is fine. Because we get to start on an Aether Vial, and this is a much better hand. This Munitions Expert's going to hit for a real amount of damage. The Ringleader is going to fill it up. And if our opponent, who also mulligan, by the way, mulligan down to 5, so everybody's on that playing today, I guess. So we'll show him the Mogg War Marshal here. Whatever. Play out our Aether Vial. And now we have a nice little curve. We get to go War Marshal on turn 2. We get to have a Munitions Expert coming in the turn after that. We've been whispered of Emrakul. We had to discard a card at random. Okay. Fair enough. It is occasionally Hymn to Torok, which is pretty neat. It's a cool card. Okay. All right. Well, third land, it's not bad for us. Not necessarily doing a ton for us quite yet. But hey, I mean, taking the Munitions Expert is pretty good for our opponent because that means we're not going to have removal here for whatever, you know, not free removal in that sense, but it looks like they might be flooding out a little bit in addition to that mulligans. So I'd have to say, if I were to draw up, maybe not, you know, the best competitive match for you to cut your teeth on here on YouTube, but a demonstration of how this deck can work, we certainly have done that thus far. We'll get some more matches in to make sure we can give a good experience here. But if nothing else, you get to see a perfect demonstration of how this deck can just win on turn 3. And now you're seeing, whether, you know, we really need to or not, it remains to be seen, but how the deck can grind. Ringleader, removal, Sling-Gang Lieutenant, this deck can go long. It's not scared of that, which is honestly a big difference between Goblins, this Goblin's deck, and sort of Goblin decks of the past, maybe. Now, with that said, we're just doing nothing over here, but I think I'm fine with that. We'll pass the turn, holding up the Heartless Act if we need it. If not, next turn we'll hit a land and can play a 4-drop, or we'll just still have removal and a Vial on 4. I have no clue what my opponent's up to over there, just playing swamps and passing. But this works out pretty well. There's a tap land for us. The 1/1 beatdown continues. I would guess my opponent is holding removal spells. They didn't necessarily want to burn on these tokens, but hey, they're poking in there for some damage. And here you go. You see, they were, in fact, holding on to removal. And now they finally pull the trigger by playing out the Murderous Rider. So this seems pretty simple for me. I'm just going to put the Ringleader into play. Now, I could have done that on my turn. It does have haste, but honestly, just keeping up the surprise is perfectly fine here. So we'll get a Munitions Expert and a Pashalik Mons. So despite these being Goblin tribal cards, they are not, in fact, Goblin cards. No tribal lands as of yet. So this is a really cool one. And whenever it or another Goblin dies, deals 1 damage to any target, and it allows you to put some mana into it to make more Goblins. So in combination with Sling-Gang Lieutenant, you can burn people out pretty quickly. So we'll just use this. Take down the Murderous Rider so the beatdown continues. That pesky lifelink over there. All right, so I'm on an always no to this these days. Okay. Wow, another Ringleader, huh? Yeah, why not? Let's fill our hand up. I said this deck can grind, and while our opponent hasn't had too much to grind against, looks like they had to mulligan and flood it out. You are seeing the power of Goblins right now that can just, you know, imagine our opponent has a bunch of removal spells. Well, no big deal, right? We are just sitting on 6 Goblins in hand, all gas, and Aether Vial to put them out, and this game's just going to end very quickly here. Now, I don't know if my opponent may have a Damnation or something like that, but Aether Vial plays around it pretty well. There you go. It's in fact, they do. It's a Dead of Winter to wipe the board. They've been holding on to that one for a while, so think about it. And because we were able to instep Ringleader, main phase Ringleader, our opponent didn't want to burn that Dead of Winter on our tokens, so instead we got to poke with the tokens. We got to put in a bunch of damage there, and look, I could have played the Sling-Gang Lieutenant and burned them here, but I don't really think we need to, right? Look, we'll just play it on the instep here. Nothing can go wrong. We'll have some tokens to continue attacking, and we have plenty of value sitting in our hand. So I'm actually, you know, stop the auto no. I guess I'm going to put it up to 5 so that I can vial in this here Kiki-Jiki. But in the meantime, I think I'm just going to play... Well, you know what? If we're playing a fair game, let's play a fair game, okay? We're going to play the Boggart Harbinger. Well, you know what? I should attack first. Because the card's going to end up going to the top. So let's go ahead and get our damage in first here. Or do I just have lethal? If I put in the Pashalik Mons with 6? Oh, turns out I do. Well, I'm glad I rethought that since we just have the wind in hand here. So look, we'll drain them, sack this, ping them with the Pashalik Mons. We're dealing 2 with this ability here. And I believe we have enough to win on the spot. Does the removal beat us? I don't know. So this is great. Our opponent literally was just sitting on a handful of removal, and they were not going to lose to us comboing them like we did in game 1. But you know what? They weren't going to beat this either. So we'll go ahead and throw these at them. And see if we have lethal here or not. Math is for my opponent to figure out, not me. But as a matter of fact, we do. There you go. Taking it down with Goblin Pod. We didn't get a pod, but we did get a combo, and we did get to do some Goblin shenanigans, and it felt good. We ended with a grip full of Goblins, just the way we drew it up. On to the next one. All right, I admit it's going to be hard to top that last match, but we are here to try, and this looks like a pretty good one to me. We get a lead on a Vial. We've got a couple Snoops. We've got a Pyre of Heroes, which we can pot away the second Snoop if we want to get the Boggart Harbinger, and we might still have a turn 4 combo win set up here, and if not, we've just got these value Snoops that can play Goblins off the top of our deck, and we have a Ringleader to refill. This is how you want your hands to look. That said, we found out where we're going to need the Thoughtseizes, because my opponent leading on Boseiju, suspending a Lotus Bloom. I mean, they banned Simian Spirit Guide, so I'm not sure what the plan is if they're playing ad nauseum, but generally when your opponent suspends a Lotus Bloom on turn 1, it's not a great sign. And I guess that means we're going to have to try to combo here before that thing comes off, and we might be able to do it depending on what the rest of our opponent's hand looks like. Well, okay, there you go. Now, that's not quite as good as it looks unless we top deck a land, and we're about to find out if we are or not. So, if we do, heck, we just have a turn 3 win. Pretty good. Now, imagine if we could play something in Spirit Guide. Oh my gosh, look at that. Not only do we have a turn 3 win, we have a turn 3 uncounterable win. Not immune to removal here, but we are immune to remand or anything like that. Not that I have really any clue what my opponent's up to right now, other than they want to combo us. It's a Temple of Plenty. So I have to say, things are looking pretty good. I don't know that I drew it up quite like this. I wanted to pod some. I wanted to have some fun. But hey, sometimes you just draw it, right? And that, everybody, I mean, look, these are nice starts for us, but this is why Goblins is a real deck in Modern. And this is why the Pyre of Heroes pushes it to a whole other level. Think about it. If we were just on a beatdown plan here, our opponent would effortlessly combo us out, and we're not playing 8-whack Goblins, so we're not going to kill our opponent on turn 3 with the way the deck is built if you're playing fair. But the fact that we're not playing fair and that we just get to combo like this is frankly just, it's an amazing tool for the deck to have access to. You can play the fair grindy game, or if your opponents are trying to go, ignore what you're doing and combo you, well, it turns out we can do that too. That's really, really something that in today's Modern especially, having access to that, even if you don't do it, right? Even if you don't combo your opponents in games 2 or 3 or whatever, if you combo them in game 1, you'll put the fear of Kiki-Jiki into them and they'll never tap out again, So, yeah, I have to say it's pretty nice. So, with that said, here we go. We're going to click a bunch again. Well, we'll see if they see the writing on the wall and just want to scoop. Not everyone's familiar with this. Look, Modern has been in such upheaval over, I mean, frankly, since Modern Horizons came out, right? We had Hogak was sort of the beginning of things, and then through power creep and Uros and whatever else you want to talk about, well, Modern just got to a point where, you know, playing dorky little goblins that combo or not, people just weren't necessarily familiar with, right? So I think they will be now. I think this birthing pod, Pyre of Heroes, is going to make a real impact on the format, right? And I think that is going to change Modern as we know it to an extent, right? Not, you know, it's not going to upend the format, but hey, it makes a deck like Combo Goblins a little more consistent. It makes a deck like Elves get its Lords out a little better. It opens up a lot of cool stuff, and the fact that it's restricted to Tribal, at this point at least, I'm willing to consider a really fair drawback to the card. We know how broken Birthing Pod was. It was the best deck in Modern, essentially, for a long time, and it ended up getting banned out of existence. And while Birthing Pod wasn't necessarily incredibly overbearing or perhaps even unfun to play against, it would have only gotten better with everything that came after it. So we'll see if this is enough of a drawback, right? Meaning that putting that you can only do it with tribal decks, I think makes a big difference. And our opponent sees the writing on the wall. Finally, they may be a slow reader, but they did get there, and we're on to game 2. So I would like these Thoughtseizes. I guess I want the Chalice of the Voids, right? What don't we want? The Ringleaders don't seem as important. I think we want to combo our opponent here more than anything else. The Munitions Experts also seem pretty mediocre. Yeah, I don't really know exactly what we're looking at, and I'm kind of scared. I'm going to keep one Munitions Expert, and I'm going to take out one Chalice of the Void here. Just like I said, I literally don't even know what we're up against. Our opponent played 2 lands, and they died. Green-White Lotus Bloom, though. So, I mean, is it a Heliod deck, combo deck? Is it a whatever the Abzan, what Abzan life gain turned into? The Vizier of Remedies combo. We don't know. But Lotus Bloom means that we need to go fast, and it means that we want some Thoughtseizes in here. This hand does not have that stuff. What this hand does have is, I mean, it has a curve, a 2-3-4 curve of powerful creatures. I think I'm going to ship it, though. I think we can do a little better, and I think this is, in fact, what a little better looks like. So I'm going to put back the, excuse me, I guess just the Swamp here. Our opponent mulliganed as well, so we're both starting on 6. And, well, we won't be Thoughtseizing them anytime soon. Huh. Okay. I do not know what we're up against, I'll say that. Well, I have no reason to reveal anything here, so I'll put this into play tapped. I'm debating whether next turn we want to play the War Marshal, or whether we want to play the Chalice of the Void on 1. Think about it. The only 1-drops in our deck, I think there's one Skirk Prospector, if I didn't board it out. Our opponent's missing a land drop. So, hey, sometimes things just work out. They kept a hand because of the ley line. It means we can't combo them, right, with the Sling-Gang. So, what we can do is attack them, though. And, well, this makes that decision a little more interesting for us. I'm going to actually play this. I'm going to be a little greedy here. I am very much considering playing the Chalice of the Void on 1, because what I was going to say is that the only cards in our deck that cost 1 is maybe a Prospector, 4 Thoughtseizes that can't target our opponent because of the ley line, and 4 Aether Vials, which are not great top decks. However, this was basically the turn where we might want an Aether Vial, but no green mana from our opponent. They kept the hand because of the ley line. There's a 1-drop. This is a good card. This used to be played quite a bit in Modern. I'm interested to see where their deck's going, that's for sure. But I think things look pretty good for us here. I'll see what I hit on my draw step, but it's very possible I just play Chalice of the Void for 1 and pass. We seem to have the luxury of going a bit slower this game, and the fact we can't combo our opponent at all means we're kind of forced into that anyway. So yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to pull the trigger on a Chalice of the Void for 1. So, I mean, our opponent showed us a 1-drop. They have not shown us a Lotus Bloom. Except they showed us a Lotus Bloom. They did it on that turn. Well, it's still fine. I must have missed them putting that one onto into suspend on that last turn. I might have considered doing it for 0, but honestly, I still think it's fine doing it for 1. You know, if they're playing cards like Magmatic Insight, I don't know what they're going to want to cast off that Lotus Bloom, but maybe we'll just stop them from doing it. For instance, that Magmatic Insight. We got him. Now, maybe they wanted to pitch a land that, I don't know, maybe they played into it. I've certainly messed up on Chalice of the Void myself a few times, including when I'm playing my own Chalice of the Void. While we're on the subject, look at that, though. We can actually wait a turn here because this has 2 suspend counters, and we can play the other Chalice for 0 next time around. So, I guess I just play the Snoop. We got Snoops to spare. All right, we got another War Marshal on top. So, I think the plan is to play the second Snoop on the instep here. It's then going to be, oh, a Nykthos. Okay, so there's devotion shenanigans going on. All right. Yeah, I mean, Leyline Nykthos is a known combo, so to speak, right? Can be pretty potent, but we had to go a little slower. We're struggling with our own land drops over here, but we have the Aether Vial to lean on, and here's the plan. We're going to put the other Snoop in on the instep. Then on our turn, we're going to tick the Vial up to 3. We're going to play the Goblin Warchief. We're then going to be able to play 2 Mogg War Marshals for 1 mana, and they'll have haste. So, big swing coming in for us, and if we're going to have to, not combo our opponent and just attack them, this is going to be a pretty good way to do it. Let's see if they have anything to say about this. They certainly have mana open to cast, I would imagine, most things now, and they took their time on their turn before deciding to pass. So we'll see if they have a response to the activation or if we get to put it into play. I don't know how scared they are of the Snoop. The other line for us might have been to main phase a Snoop and to see if we hit something on top, but I don't really think we're in a position where we need to value mana efficiency quite that highly. All right, so we'll tick the Vial up to 3. There we go. We got a 3rd land on top of our deck. We'll put the Warchief into play. Making all of our Goblin spells cost 1 less, and they have haste. I don't remember what set Goblin Warchief was originally printed in, but it is a pretty classic Magic card. And it's certainly a pretty classic combo with War Marshal. I mean, maybe, Goblin Chieftain, which gives +1 in haste to all of your Goblins, rather than giving the discount on the mana. Maybe combo's a little better. It pumps them all up. But hey, look at the attack we're coming in with here. Keep in mind, when our opponent moved to their instep, we had 1 Grizzly Bear in play. We had 1 2/2 in play. And here we are attacking for however much damage this is. 10. Half your life gone. And we get to try a 0-cost Chalice of the Void, which resolves. And now our opponent's going to be big sad with this Lotus Bloom, unless they have a way out of it, because we'll be coming in for lethal again next turn. I don't know what they were going to do. I don't know if this Lotus Bloom mana was going to be the difference or not in them winning on this turn. But hey, they're a combo deck. It might have been. So we'll see. They're certainly going to do something. Ruined Halo, you say? Okay. This is a fun card. They have protection from the chosen card name. This is another way to not die to, I guess, Conspicuous Snoop. If I'd actually put a Sling-Gang Lieutenant into play, I think it would not work. But yeah, they named Conspicuous Snoop. In this case, I mean, it's going to fog 4 damage every turn out of these pair. That said, Do I get to replace it with the Sling-Gang? No, I think I only get 3 unless we hit, and we know we're going to hit a land. So, all right, doesn't look like we're going to have lethal here. I do think I actually want to pay Echo on one of these. But I don't know what their plan is going to be to win the game after this. They're playing Naya enchantment, Naya devotion enchantments. This is a thing, right? With the Rune Halos and the Leyline of Sanctities, and you can get big devotion numbers, and there's a lot of prisony effects in white, and when you dip into these other colors, you get things like sweepers, which is one of the things I'm concerned about here, which is why I actually want to pay the Echo of one of these so that we get to keep one around if they have a board wipe. So we will go ahead and pay the Echo. Now, in the dark, if I didn't know what was on top, I might not do that because the Sling-Gang with haste gives us 3 more power. And if we attacked for 10 last turn, -4, we'd end up 1 short. And if there were then a Goblin on top of our deck, we'd be able to win, which I guess is true with the Snoop as well. But as it stands, our opponent did not want to face it any longer. We got there. I don't know what was going on with their deck, but I will tell you our deck performed extremely well. Hey, this is showing some consistency from Goblins. We're seeing some power, some grinding, and the game is just entirely different when your opponent knows that you could combo them out at any time. But hey, let's see if we can keep winning. And now, friends, we come to the moment of truth. Do we ship this hand that has a Vial and a decent curve? We do. I'm not opposed to keeping 1-lane Vial hands. Trust me, I'm not. But I don't think that was the one. This looks pretty good, though. I mean, given the mulligan anyway, we can keep it. We can put the Kiki-Jiki on the bottom of the deck. We've got lands to cast our spells. We are even on the play. And we'll see where things go. Our opponent did not mulligan this time, so no starting a card ahead like we've had the fortune of in our first couple, but that's all right. Very much looks like they could be sitting on removal or the like over there. I'm going to fetch now. I don't want to draw any more lands, so we'll... let's see. I guess just get a mountain here. But yeah, if our opponent's sitting on a lightning bolt or whatever, Mogg War Marshal makes that look pretty bad. So instead, they're probably just going to fetch, put a shock land, and play tapped here. And we'll have some Goblins out and ready to go. And I realized, the Skirk Prospector can actually be gotten via the Pyre of Heroes by sacrificing a Goblin token. Notice the pod card here. Search your library for a creature card that shares a creature type with CMC equal to 1 plus the creature's converted mana cost, which, or mana value, I suppose, which with a token is 0. Here you go, though. Our opponent is on, I mentioned it last round, they're on Anafenza combo here, Vizier of Remedies, so that's something we're going to have to keep in mind, and we don't exactly have a combo set up quite yet. So we'll see what the top of our deck brings us. The land I didn't want to draw, so... All right, here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to... We can't attack, but what I can do is Boggart Harbinger. And since I don't have the combo, you need the Snoop in play beforehand, right? Drawing the Snoop wouldn't necessarily do much for us here. I'm actually going to play a bit of the fair game, and I'm going to go get a Munitions Expert so that next turn we can shoot down the Anafenza. And as a matter of fact, we can shoot down the Anafenza and play the Pyre of Heroes, or, hey, play the Pyre of Heroes and activate it if we want. Let's see what they do. All right, Walking Ballista for 1, which of course gets bolstered up to 2. So now our opponent has the ability to not only probably combo us to death next turn, but shoot down some of our Goblins here. But the good news is they can only shoot down 2, meaning I'll still have 2 left over afterwards when the Munitions Expert resolves. So we should still be able to take out either the Ballista or the Anafenza. And I think I'll go for the Anafenza. I don't really want my opponent to just put 4 counters on the... spend 4 mana and put counters on the Ballista either. It does tear us up pretty badly. In the meantime, look at them, though. They're just building up the board. Oh. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. That's bad news. Well, so Anafinza says bolster. It's not that creature gets a counter. It's the creature with the least toughness among creatures you control. So since the Ballista had 1 toughness, another creature came into play. They're actually going to put a second counter on the Ballista. So this is not great for us. Like a double block, at which point they just remove a counter. I mean, this is bad, right? This is Walking Ballista just destroying our deck. The good news, if there is good news in this very dire situation here, is that we can at least make them do it, right? In this sense, we should at least be able to trade our Munitions Expert for the Walking Ballista, even if we can't take out the Anafinza. But I have to kind of force their hand by targeting the Anafinza. So now they face a choice. They can either lose their Anafinza or lose their Walking Ballista. Anafinza is a legendary creature. It's the one that, if they have a second copy of, is, you know, could easily just be sitting in their hand. And the Ballista destroys us, but I think we have to at least put them to the test here. And there we go. They do care about their Anafinza, so they are, in fact, going to blow up the Ballista. So, hey, I can't say I feel great about where things are at. Our opponent just untapped with an Anafinza up to 5 mana and 5 cards in hand. But on the bright side, we have a Pyre of Heroes that can go get a Goblin Matron next turn, which can then get, heck, a Munitions Expert, and we can try to hit the Anafinza again. We've got some options here, and, you know, I say that. The Conclave Mentor is essentially a second copy of Anafinza, I think. Although, look at this. It actually, it's quite the combo with Anafinza, making this Avacyn's Pilgrim into quite the world beater. So, they have 3 mana now. I don't feel great about where we're at. I'll say that. But maybe they'll tap out for something that doesn't matter. Or not tap out at all. Okay. I mean, look, the thing about this Birthing Pod, this Pyre of Heroes, and what it does for this deck is we might just get run over by opponent here, but consider this world instead, where we throw away, we're in a terrible spot right now, right? But if, you know, things work out in our favor, we turn the Munitions Expert into a Goblin Matron, which then gets another Goblin from top of our deck, which we can use to impact the board. But it also means that the turn after that, we can Pyre of Heroes away the Goblin Matron into a Goblin Warleader and completely refill our hand. Now, as it stands, our opponent just has an extraordinarily good hand, and we flood it out, so I guess we're dead. On to game 2, though. Heartless Acts seem good. I mean, Thoughtseizes don't seem bad. Gonna cut some amount of combo. Yeah, we'll give this a shot. I don't know if we want the Thoughtseizes or not. I mean, look, our deck is going to struggle a little bit here. I think that's, you know, this is just a matchup where our opponent, between the fact that their creatures can get big, between the fact that they have mana ramp to get out in front, and, you know, we didn't have a vial, or we didn't have, you know, one of our stronger hands there. But also, you know, Dromoka's Command and Walking Ballista can just beat us on their own. You know, a Walking Ballista pings so much of our deck away that it's something you have to be concerned about. So we'll see where things go from here in game number 2. That was an interesting one. I mean, it shows the power of these green-white decks, and I think Modern is in a good place if we're in a position where we have, you know, we can play red-black tribal goblins that can combo, but hey, maybe our opponent can also play green-white bears. You know, that's what they did. They just beat us to death with green-white bears that Dromoka's Command and a Walking Ballista. Nothing super powerful there, but hey, that their deck is sort of in the same boat that our deck is, where they can do what they did in that game, which is play fair and win. They can also combo you out. And look, that's a good way for creature decks to be relevant in the format. I would like to play first, though, and I think I'd like to ship this 5-lander and keep this one. We'll throw back I guess a Wooded Foothills. Or the Cavern of Souls. I don't know if it matters too much here. I'll throw back the Cavern. And I'll actually start by fetching out a mountain. And maybe this way we don't have to shock, depending on what we draw next turn. Okay, well, yep. Do I kill the birds? I guess we'll see what we draw. I certainly will if we don't draw something we could play. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you want to look at it, that is something we can play. I mean, hey, they say bolt the bird, right? So, you know, I'll tell you what, I'm going to bolt the bird. I think with our Aether Vial and the fact that we have a Ringleader in hand as well, I mean, look, we're kind of guaranteed a stream of goblins throughout this game. I would just like to slow my opponent down. And look at that. The Strangleroot Geist is nice and resilient. All right, well, there you go. Let's play the War Marshal out. That at least trades pretty decently with a Strangleroot Geist. I mean, this has Echo, and we're not going to pay the Echo, so heck, it's a free block, and then the Goblins can trade with it. So our 2-drop can, in theory, trade with their 2-drop. However, look at this. Huh. I guess I'll let it through this time. I mean, look, that's a pretty power. I mean, this is we're playing fair Magic here, folks, but they're doing it pretty well. I'll say that. All right, put the Snoop in play. We're going to draw a land. A land is actually not very good, I'm not going to lie, and I think that means I'll actually just be paying the Echo cost because, well, I say that. No, I'm not going to pay the Echo cost. Oh, my mouse is going crazy here. Sorry about that. I think I want to see if we hit something on top, so maybe in that case I should have blocked, but I don't want this 4-3 to start beating us down. I can at least put that off for a little bit. Hey, that changes some stuff. Now that, I'm glad I didn't pay the Echo, I'll tell you what, because this changes the complexion of the game entirely. Now all of a sudden, I can beat. Let's attack. I'll race you, friend. And next turn, I'm going to have an Aether Vial on 4. I can put in a Sling-Gang Lieutenant, and we can swing and drain for a big chunk of damage. Provided, of course, our opponent doesn't just combo us out. Or, you know, just play a Walking Ballista. That would kind of put a damper in the plans as well. But let's see what they've got. I mean, they have access to a lot of mana, and if Court of Calling is in their deck, Collected Company, those type of things, there's honestly no telling what could hit the battlefield. So I think we need to, you know, not get too far ahead of ourselves. Our board could be decimated by the time we untap, but that, I think, was one of the better cards to have on top. And not only was it a great one to play, it was card advantage. It came off the top of our deck. Unfortunately, this Walking Ballista is pretty annoying. We'll see what they want to do, though. I mean, at least the Goblin Chieftain pumps the team, right? So they have to, you know, take out the Chieftain first, expend 2 counters that way. Let's see what we hit. Wow. Pashalik Mons is exactly the card I wanted here. That is huge. Huge to have on top. Now our opponent is forced into a really bad choice. Do they expend the Walking Ballista entirely to take down our Conspicuous Snoop, preventing us from casting Pashalik Mons? No, they do not. And that means we can do some stuff. Now, let's see what happens if they let me resolve this. I suspect this will trigger them to burn... Oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting. I guess I'm going to attack. I want to just get damage in, and in this game, in a flurry of vialing in a Sling-Gang Lieutenant, with some kind of Walking Ballista trigger on the stack and a Pashalik Mons in play, and see if we can just come up with 5, 6, 7, 8 points of damage to throw directly at our opponent's face and maybe poke through with some of these goblins after. As a matter of fact, it's debatable. Maybe I could have done a little math, but maybe we should have swung with the Chieftain as well. But that's a pretty free trade with the Strangleroot Geist, and I think would not really, my opponent wouldn't really go for anything. So let's, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to play the Sling-Gang Lieutenant. They chose not to do anything with their Ballista. So let's see what they have to say about this. There we go. They got scared. They throw 1 on the Goblin Chieftain. They're going to throw another at the Goblin Chieftain. But I think this works out for us. And now look, let's do some math. Okay, so well, I can do this. I can actually send this point at the Ballista to force them to go ahead and burn it now, and then we'll get our Sling-Gang Lieutenant in. With a Pashalik Mons still in play. We might just have lethal. And let's see what they did there. They actually chose to throw that at us. So that's good, I think. And now we get to use our Vial. Put in the Sling-Gang Lieutenant. Use the Sling-Gang Lieutenant to sack the Snoop. Send this point at them. And now we get to see if we have enough to win. I think we do. Combo Goblins, everybody. Look at that. Yeah, that puts them down to 5. We've definitely got this. We'll just throw away some Goblins, and we got there. That was a tricky turn. And look, that wasn't a combo. We didn't do infinite damage to our opponent, but you know what? We did some tricky Goblin mid-range stuff. That's what I want. This is what I want out of a Goblins deck. The threat to kill somebody on turn 3, but the ability to win a weird, grindy, crazy mid-range game like what just happened. That was great. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in game number 3 here, obviously, but I have to say I was pretty happy with how that went. Win or lose, that was a great match, or a great game. This is the kind of, and look, I'm a little biased, but this is the kind of Modern I love. Back and forth, situations that change from game to game. That is, I don't think that's I could play this opponent 10 times. I don't think we'll have a situation quite like that come up again. And that's neat to me. That's pretty cool. So, hitting our land there, a fetch land, is pretty decent. We're certainly going to be behind the 8 ball here. Our opponent has the turn 1 Birds of Paradise. They did not mulligan either, so we're going to be on the defensive here for sure. Spike Feeder, yep, that is the combo, or at least it's one of the combos I imagine is in their deck. Allows them to gain infinite life, I believe is how this one would work. Yep. I believe this combos with Archangel of Thune. Yeah, I think that's the one. It's a 5-drop angel that something about whenever you gain life, put a counter on each creature you control, I think. So all you have to do is, you just gain infinite life, right? Just going back and forth with just the Spike Feeder and having that in place. So, all right, I'm done drawing lands now, though. I don't want to draw any more lands. I guess I'll just show them the War Marshal here, and we're going to end up casting it. I mean, this is going to be a worse type of game for us in that we don't have a Vial, so we're behind in we're behind in mana because we're on the draw. We're behind in mana because they have a Birds of Paradise. And one of the ways that our deck can really fight back with that and justify these 3 and 4 drops in a creature deck here in Modern is by having Vial, and in this game we don't. So we're definitely on the defensive, but we have to hope that maybe the Heartless Act, the Matron, we come up with enough removal pieces to keep our opponent from comboing us out of here. But unfortunately, that doesn't really come online, I think, until turn 4. If I have to pass with Heartless Act up next turn, that's very, very bad for us. So I just don't even think there's a way we can win if we go that route. So almost no matter what, I'm priced into playing the Goblin Matron here on turn 3 and getting a Munitions Expert and hoping. That card has protection from our deck. I guess it doesn't have protection from the Heartless Act, but the good news is if that's what our opponent is doing with their turn, it's just playing a Firewalker and passing, that means we're not dead, right? So we can attempt to continue to play the game, so to speak. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play a Goblin Matron here. Yeah, you're going to gain plenty of life for me this time. All right, well, we'll get a Munitions Expert, put it into our hand, pass the turn. I'm very curious to see if this works. This is just, it's mind-blowing almost to have a Goblins deck that plays like a control deck. But that's kind of what we're doing. We want next turn to play Munitions Expert with Heartless Act up. And if our opponent doesn't just kill us or do something, you know, so board dominating that we can't catch up, we're going to be in a position to play control and then play the Ringleaders to refill our hands. I mean, that's pretty powerful. That said, it all comes down to our opponent has free reign here, and they have plenty of mana. So we'll see. If it's a Archangel of Thune with a land drop, that would gain infinite life. I'd probably scoop to it, even though technically we can beat that, right? Infinite damage beats infinite life. Trying to think it through. So yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that they could gain infinite life and then we could do infinite damage if we assembled our combo, but I'm not here for that, right? That's a lot. I'll rather just say, you know, we'll see. We'll see what happens, so. I guess the fact that either they're figuring out how to tap for Quarter Calling and we're in trouble, or they don't have lethal here, right? They don't have something that we can't beat. Eldritch Evolution, okay? They were trying to figure out how to combo. So Eldritch Evolution, away the Birds of Paradise. And this is a pet card of mine. I love this thing. It's Birthing Pod, right? Sort of, right? It's even better. And the small cost of sacrificing a creature. So it is the Heliod, and I believe that means infinite life, right? Whenever you gain life, put a counter on target creature or enchantment you control. I mean, looks to me like they're gonna have us here, right? Yeah, well, maybe. I mean, maybe, weirdly, the fact that we do have 2 removal spells might be what gives us a shot here. We'll see how things go. I'll play the Munitions Expert. Oh, that's bad. Let's see where they put the counter. They put it on the Spike Feeder. I actually think we lose. If they don't put it on the Spike Feeder, I think we can beat it. I think. And from their perspective, it doesn't necessarily make sense to put it on the Spike Feeder, right? If they put this counter on the Firewalker, I think we have a chance. If I'm understanding without, you know, diving too deep into it, how the stack will work. But this is actually a really big decision. If they put it on the Spike Feeder, I think we lose. And there you go. They are. I don't know if they thought it through, but it certainly was a good call for them. Because the way this was going to work is if it had 2 counters on it and we target it. They remove 1. Yeah, they remove 1. We let it resolve. This ability goes on the stack. Then we Heartless Act it? No, I don't think it would have worked anyway. I think they've just got us here. At least they have infinite life. So, okay. Oh. Heartless Act is not Doomblade. Most of the time it's Doomblade, friends. However, it's not Doomblade in this case. Destroy target creature with no counters on it. Remove 3 counters. Well, does removing the counters work? Is this thing a 0/0 naturally? I guess so. Well, okay. Maybe this still works in this way then. We force them to gain their infinite life. Or, you know, whatever arbitrary amount of life they want, but I think we can beat it. By assembling our infinite damage combo. So I think I will be F6ing and seeing how big they want to go. I mean, look, maybe they go up to 200 life. I can beat that. They go to 1,000 life. I can beat that. If we're playing in paper, they go to infinite life. I can beat that. I don't know if I'm going to want to click it a billion times, but I could. And our opponent has 2 cards in hand only, and then they can crack the Waterlogged Rope for another, but... Now, I hate to make you all sit here and wait through this, so how about this? How about I'll talk about... I want to go look here. Let's... I'm going to go look at the most recent ban list announcement, and we can talk about it. I want to go through each of these cards, because I think we might be here for a bit. Alright, Field of the Dead is banned. Mystic Sanctuary is banned. Field of the Dead, I think, is the card that probably went the most under the radar from a design perspective. Yeah, it's a repeatable effect, and repeatable effects can be abused, and Wizards knows this, etc., when they design cards. But did anyone really think that a colorless land, I believe it even comes into play tapped, right? It comes into play tapped. You have to then have 7 or more differently named lands. I think they thought this would be a cool addition to Maze's Index and Commander. And maybe a control deck can find a way to play it and get some zombies at the end, right? I do not think they expected it to just take over immediately. Well, hey, and look at that. Our opponent decides 50 life is enough. So I guess maybe we'll talk about the rest another time. But anyways, I was at Field of the Dead. I don't think they expected to ever have to ban that card, right? But they did. And I think it was the right call. Now, Mystic Sanctuary should have never been printed, frankly. Fetchable lands are already dangerous enough. A fetchable land with that effect is borderline negligent, right? Like, everyone knows that. I would tell you, some of the people who design Magic, some of those people, their favorite card is Cryptic Command. They knew exactly how Mystic Sanctuary was going to be used. It creates repetitive, unfun board states, and it's no surprise it needed to get banned. Spirit Guide should have never been in the format. As much as, and I'm somebody who's played a fair amount of Simian Spirit Guide decks, and it's almost sad how many cool decks I have that it went in, that it killed. You know, Living In is kind of the poster child for the splash damage there. Ad Nauseam, though, Ad Nauseam is essentially a broken deck. But once you let Simian Spirit Guide exist for 5 years, and there's some decks that rely on it, and those decks aren't problematic, you kind of can't get rid of it. But it was pretty clear. 5-6 years ago, I was saying Simian Spirit Guide's going to get banned because it never does anything fair. And look, it ended up banned. Tybalt's Trickery, that should have just been in a commander set. Whatever. Uro should have never been printed. So there you go. There's my take on the recent bannings. That said, 47 life is super beatable in any way, right? Not only is that super beatable by comboing, obviously, we can just deal enough damage to get around that thing. Just thinking this one through here. I think I'm going to play the Warchief and the Vial. I don't have attacks. The Warchief doesn't matter a ton yet, and you know, but it will. Whereas the Vial matters pretty much not at all. But the plan here is going to be try to assemble a combo. And given that, you know, I can tap out for Ringleaders for 2 turns in a row and then have a bunch of Goblins I can't play. At least with the Vial, we can, you know, think about vialing stuff in the future. And now we can play these Ringleaders for 6 mana. So if we hit a land, we can play both of them for 6 mana because of the 1 mana discount to each. But it also means we can just play one for 3 mana and then actually have a fair amount of options available to us based on what we find from that. But let's see what our opponent's up to here. I mean, look, Heliod, Anafinza, Firewalker. We're dead to a Ballista. We're not dead to Court of Calling for Ballista, because it would be a 0, would die to state-based effects before the bolster goes off. Collected Company into Ballista doesn't get us. So it is possible that we are doing okay here. I don't know what they have. If I were them, seeing my board, I actually might just crack that Waterlogged Grove to try to find it right now and win the game. Looks like they're going to maybe go a different route here, though. Oh, they just had it. Okay. Well, I'm out of tricks, friend. Your ballista is going to get me. Right? We're just dead to this thing, right? Or are we not? Yep. Give it lifelink. That'll do it. Good game, friend. Okay, well, that was a fun match, honestly. I enjoyed that. We were able to stop one combo from our opponent, but not all of them. So what would I change here about Goblin Pod? Well, I wish we'd got to pod a little more. That was not the case, but we had some great matches, and, you know, pod is incredible. We see every game state we got into, you can do something with Birthing Pod. It's just a card that will never not be good. And the fact that this deck, the reason it's so good in this Goblins deck in particular, is obviously the fact that it can help us combo. But more than that, we have ETB values, right? We have ETB Matron. We have ETB Sling-Gang. We have ETB Ringleader. We have ETB War Marshal. Not that maybe that's not necessarily the one you want. ETB Munitions Expert. This is not a deck where Birthing Pod gets to slot in to sometimes help you combo. This is a deck where Birthing Pod is actively powerful. Pyre of Heroes is an incredible build-around card, and you're going to continue to see decks pop up around it in Pioneer and in Modern in the future. And this might just be one of the best because it's a combo enabler, which is where it's at its most powerful, but it is a value enabler in this deck in a way that it is not in, say, an Elf deck or a Sliver deck or anything like that. So I wouldn't change anything about the main deck. It felt really clean. It looks good. The sideboard is what you make of it, honestly. You know, if you want to put Leyline of Voids in there, if that's your graveyard hate of choice, etc., you can do that. I have to say, everybody, I had a lot of fun with this one. I love this deck. I think it has a really bright future in Modern. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Goblins is going to be popping up in the months to come. Everybody, thank you so much for watching Mining Modern. I'm Corbin Hosler, as always, here for Cool Stuff Inc. You can find me on Twitter at Chosler, Chosler. You can find my podcast, Brainstorm Brewery. I do event coverage for Wizards. As a matter of fact, I'll have an article out ahead of the Kaldheim Championship here in a couple weeks. So everybody, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week.